unstable structure.
The setting, a cargo plane carrying the memories of time. The El Al Boeing 747-200F, tail number 4X-A×G, was the type of aircraft that had traversed many long hauls and weathered many years. Rolling off the production line in 1979, it had served numerous heavy-duty journeys, transporting cargo around the world. On October 4, 1992, it continued a familiar schedule, leaving New York, heading toward Tel Aviv, with a stopover in Amsterdam. It was a standard flight path, unremarkable on paper, however. For those who had stood in the hangars for decades, they knew that every old aircraft carries the traces of time. Small weaknesses hidden in the steel, details requiring more care than usual. This 747 belonged to that group, not necessarily having problems visible to the naked eye, but enough to make experienced engineers wary. Maintenance rumors at the time spoke frequently about the plane reaching a period requiring a deep overhaul, especially in the engine mount system. Although pre-flight checks from JFK reported no serious errors, the string of technical notes in the maintenance log told a different story. It was entering a phase where if just one small detail was overlooked, everything could go wrong. This was the breaking point of the schedule, the moment an aging plane needed more than just superficial inspections. And when a 747 has flown millions of miles without proper care, it is like a machine keeping silent, waiting for the day to speak up in a way no one wants. Flight 1862 left New York that night in exactly that state. Normal on the surface, but internally, warning signs had long appeared. It was just that no one had pieced them together yet. Technical warnings downplayed before takeoff. Looking at the maintenance history of this 747, one thing was clear: it did not lack reminders. Before leaving New York, records showed it had been held back due to technical concerns. These weren't major incidents that shut down the airport, but small, repetitive issues, the kind of signals any old engineer understands. The machine is asking for deeper care. However, in the hustle of major maintenance centers, people sometimes followed habit. One detail was deemed okay, and another marked passable. Over time, this familiarity created a dangerous gap. For aircraft 4X-A×G, that gap lay right in the engine mount, the place holding the heavy steel mass to the wing, where Boeing had set strict inspection procedures because they understood the limited endurance of the materials. But guidelines are one thing and execution is another. The maintenance company at that time did not fully follow the original standards. Some inspection steps were shortened, and some items were evaluated by naked eye instead of using specialized measuring tools. And precisely here, the microcracks on the engine mounting pins, fuse pins, were missed. To an outsider, it was just a crack thinner than a hair. But to technical personnel, it was the first sign of a chain reaction no one wanted to witness. Later investigations made the story clearer. The 747 departed with a weakness that should have been detected. It wasn't due to a single wrong decision, but multiple acts of leniency piled on top of each other. And when a small detail is downplayed right when the material is fatigued by time, the price to pay is usually not small. Days like that in the profession always leave a chilling feeling. If only one procedure had been done right from the start, the whole story would have turned in a different direction. Sequential malfunction signals in flight. As the 747 left the East Coast and entered the airspace over the Atlantic, a series of technical warnings began to emerge more clearly. To professionals, these weren't alarms requiring an immediate diversion, but they were annoying signals. Small, disjointed, yet enough to show the plane was not truly as healthy as the schedule required. First, the autothrottle operated erratically. On many long-haul flights, this system helps reduce the pilot's workload by maintaining steady speed over hours. When it malfunctioned, the pilot had to manually adjust more often, like driving a highway car where the cruise control keeps flickering on and off. Not immediately dangerous, but a sign to be recorded. Next was the long-range radio, the device for maintaining contact when far from the continent. When it suffered interference, the crew had to scramble with other communication methods. Again, not a major issue, but any small glitch over the ocean easily prompts the thought, why is the machine having so many issues today? Then, the voltage from generator number 3 fluctuated. It wasn't a total blackout, but these flickers often indicate that the internal electrical system is bearing an uneven load. On a 747, generators must coordinate rhythmically. An unstable power source is like a band member playing offbeat. The whole band doesn't collapse immediately, but the sound starts to distort. All these errors were fixed temporarily according to procedure, but to someone with 3 decades of experience, these were the whispers of the aircraft. It was carrying accumulated fatigue from years of flying and incomplete maintenance sessions. When small signals appear densely, they are no longer coincidences. They are a precursor to something approaching. The storm begins. Engines detached, wings shattered. Just minutes after lifting off from Schiphol Airport, the peace of the flight was suddenly shattered by a deafening explosion. This was not the pop of a small device or a trivial incident, but the sound signaling a tragic turning point. The 2 right-side engines, number 3 and number 4, abandoned their positions right on the wing and fell to the ground like massive iron blocks slipping their anchors. The cause lay in the safety pins, called fuse pins, small steel bars responsible for holding the engine tightly to the wing. Over the years, the material under pressure had become fatigued, forming very small cracks, almost invisible to the naked eye. This was the type of failure only specialized equipment could detect, and regrettably, it had escaped pre-flight control. When one of these pins broke, the force balance on the airframe was destroyed. The remaining pins could not withstand the concentrated pressure and broke in a domino effect. Engine number 3 twisted violently, colliding with engine number 4 beside it. This collision not only caused 2 engines to detach from the wing, but also ripped apart the wing structure, damaging the hydraulic system and control parts needed to keep the plane stable. The situation immediately became critical. The aircraft, already burdened with long-term signs of damage, no longer had the strength to maintain equilibrium. The crew, in a chaotic swirl of handling urgent tasks while trying to keep the plane under control, began to realize that everything was slipping out of reach. This was the starting point of a chain of events that should never have been allowed to happen, but did happen, marking a turning point in aviation history. Chaotic communication and difficult decisions in the air. The flight crew, including a seasoned captain, a first officer, and an experienced flight engineer, immediately fell into a state of alarm as the explosion shook the cockpit. But in the chaos, neither the crew nor air traffic control realized the true severity. 2 engines had left the wing. The display screens only showed engines losing thrust, a signal hard to distinguish from a standard engine failure. As the situation became clearer, the pilots requested an emergency landing, choosing to approach runway 27, a controversial option. The reason wasn't that this runway was ideal, but because it had a tailwind, which is generally taboo for landing. However, this runway was close to the aircraft's position and possessed the airline's rescue facilities, a plus point in the race against time and danger. This decision reflected a paradox in emergency situations, choosing between technical safety and the ability for rapid rescue. Air traffic control also hesitated initially, not fully grasping the extent of the incident, leading to imperfect coordination during the decisive minutes. The timeline became urgent. The crew had to handle complex technical situations while maintaining contact with the ground, all while the plane was losing control due to severe damage on the right wing. The choice of runway 27 showed the fierce trade-off between flight theory and harsh reality in the air, a high-pressure equation placed on the shoulders of those remaining at the controls in a life-or-death moment. Aerodynamic imbalance and the catastrophic fall into a residential area. After losing the 2 right engines, the wing of the Boeing 747 was severely destroyed, wrecking the hydraulic system and control surfaces. Meanwhile, the left wing still generated lift, creating a strong banking force, subjecting the plane to an abnormal torque that was difficult to control. As the crew tried to reduce speed to prepare for the emergency landing, this imbalance became even more distinct. The aircraft became increasingly unstable. Control inputs gradually lost effect under the pressure of the massive skewing force. Amidst the darkening Amsterdam sky, the 747 gradually lost the ability to fly straight, beginning to roll and lose altitude uncontrollably. Finally, in the darkest moment, the plane plunged straight into the Bijlmer residential area. The impact caused a fierce fire, spreading and destroying many apartments in the area. Concrete walls collapsed, smoke and fire billowed up, creating a horrific scene that was not just an aviation disaster, but a heavy blow to the community. This fall was not just the consequence of technical errors, but proof of a chain of uncontrollable decisions and situations. When all control forces, from humans to machines, failed before the power of the technical breakdown, the tragedy became unavoidable, leaving a deep scar of pain in aviation history and the local community. Catastrophic consequences and the lingering ghost of controversy. The official investigation ended with the death toll at 43 people, including the crew and local residents, along with immense material damage weighing on the Bijlmer neighborhood. The cause of the disaster was identified as maintenance errors, specifically metal fatigue in the safety pins. A seemingly small weakness that led to unfathomable consequences, however, the picture did not stop there. Suspicions regarding military cargo on the flight and the fact that the cockpit voice recorder was not fully recovered ignited a wave of skepticism in the public. The crisis response system of the authorities was also put under the microscope, with many unanswered questions about how information was processed and transmitted. The shadow of a lack of transparency lingered, raising concerns about public health in the affected area as toxic substances from the fire spread into the environment. The story of the El Al Flight 1862 crash became a symbol of the complexity of aviation safety, where technical error is just one part of a larger picture, a web of mistakes, inadequacies in maintenance procedures, control, and post-accident response. The persistent controversies are not just traces of a past tragedy, but a warning bell about never ignoring the smallest details in aviation, because just one weak thread can pull along an entire chain of tragedy that is hard to soothe. This is a bitter lesson that experts and the public cannot forget, standing before the ceaseless challenges of flight safety and transparency in investigation.